Okay, the 10 essentials of hiking, the 10 essentials of outdoors, the 10 essentials of scouting versus the 10 C's of survival. Which one's right, which one's wrong, which one's good, which one's bad. What's the difference between all of them? Stick around, let's jump in. Back in the 1930s, there was an outdoor organization called the Mountaineers, and they really sort of coined the phrase for these 10 essential items for outdoor activities. And that's really what the 10 essentials of scouting, 10 essentials of hiking are all based off of. That is sort of the benchmark for everything. And then you'll notice there's a little bit of deviation and differentiation when you get over to the 10 C's of survival, but you're going to notice that these things are all super closely related. So we're going to dive through each of the systems and talk about what's different, what's similar. Okay, so one area that's really consistent across all these listings is some way to do actual land navigation. So looking for some kind of compass, whether it looks like one of these or even something like this. We need some way to go through and actually do directions. What I don't want is garbage that looks like this or this or this. These are not adequate compasses. They need to be something legitimate, something real. And also, what good is a compass with no map? So we always want to have a way to actually orient ourselves while we're out and about. But then we also need something to be able to write on and something to write with, so that we can make any notes about where we're going and where we've been, and keep tabs on things. So all of this in my head falls into that land navigation category. So regardless of the terminology, all these lists are consistent with, I need to have some way to know where I'm going and where I've been. And yes, before you ask, the apps on your phone do absolutely count as this navigation tool. Having said that though, I've definitely lost phones, I've broken phones, I've had dead batteries. So I'm a bit old school. I really prefer that actual hard map and compass. So I do continue to use technology, but I like having that something tangible that the battery's not going to die on. So whether we're talking about something fun like just a Bic, which is about the easiest thing to do, or something even more entertaining like these stormproof matches, which are just almost impossible to put out. They're like the old school trick birthday candles that you just can't get rid of. Or you're doing something a little more primitive like the ferro rod. I will say, if you're going to go out and use something like this, you definitely want to know how to use it before you go out there, and don't take something brand new that you've never used and just assume you can make a fire with that, because you may end up cold and in the dark. And then along with this, I'll throw just some easy tinder into this category too. Whether you're comfortable just going out with something simple like jute and fat wood, or you're going to come in with something more like this, as some of the store-bought stuff, these little fast line cubes, or just the old school Vaseline and cotton ball. These things work perfectly fine as well. So regardless of what it is, you just need a simple form of tinder to kind of get things moving, to kind of help aid in your firecraft, and it'll go a long way. Okay, so another common area that's going to be consistent across all of these lists is going to be some form of lighting when you're outside, whether it is a headlamp or a little small lantern, like this little Goal Zero, or something a little more robust like a full-size flashlight, or even just plain old glow sticks. You need something that you can use while you're out and about, just for some easy lighting. I definitely gravitate more toward the headlamp, because now I'm hands-free. But I will tell you, if you're taking something like this out, you need a way to recharge it, or you need extra batteries when you're out and about, because what you don't want to do is need it, jump in there, and then all of a sudden it's dead, which is never fun. And on the 5C front, you may be wondering, like, how do you get to this as being a C? Headlamp starts with H, flashlight starts with an F, candling device. Now that pretty much wraps up the ones that easily all fit into the same box. So from here forward, now we're going to start seeing some deviation from how things kind of group together, and really start to see the differences break out across all these groups. So going forward, the one-to-one correlation in these categories gets a little bit murkier. For what the Mountaineers call repair kit and tool, in my head, that's definitely some kind of bladed instrument, whether it's a multi-tool or something that's a little more fixed blade-ish. The Boy Scouts go with a single line item that is just pocket knife. There's nothing about a repair kit. For me, in my head, repair kit's going to include something more like, at least if I'm hiking, something like tenacious tape, possibly even a small sewing kit for gear repairs. Also going to include, something fun like duct tape. We get over to the 5 C's of survival side. It's really going to be comprised of 3 different line items on that list of 10. First one being cutting tool. And it does not have to be something enormous like this.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
It could be something smaller like this. It could be something even in between like this knife. This is definitely overkill for out hiking. So a lot of times I'll carry something small like that. But cutting tool could also include fun stuff like a folding saw for processing. This is not your cutting tool implement. I may have been the baddest kid in 1983 running around with my plastic hollow handle Rambo knife. Definitely whatever you're using, make sure it's something that is safe. So going along with that on the 10 C's, we have the cutting tool. They also do a separate line item that is the cargo tape. So back to our duct tape here. And they also have a separate line item for a cloth sail needle, for just a big thick needle for gear repair, which is why I'm sort of clustering all these together. So we're going from repair kit and tool on the Mountaineer side, to pocket knife on the scouting side, to on the 10 C's of survival side is the cutting tool, the cloth needle, and the cargo tape. So you guys can see these are all starting to blur together pretty quickly. Next up is a category that in my head I think of as the elements. And this is a little bit of a jumbled mess between all the other lists. On the Mountaineer side, they categorize it in 3 different groupings. There's sun protection, there's sheltering, and then there's additional clothing. On the Scouts, they've got 3 different sections as well: extra clothing, rain gear, and sun protection. Nothing whatsoever on that side about sheltering, which I thought was odd. But then on the 10 C's of survival, I'm combining this with cover and cordage. No real call out specifically for different types of clothing, but at the same time, I consider that stuff part of my cover. So cover doesn't necessarily have to be just a tarp or a tent, but it does need to, but that sheltering system also includes what I'm wearing and what I've got with me. So from a sun protection perspective, it could be anything from, nice big floppy hat to sunscreen to longer sleeves if we're out in the sun. Or during the wintertime, it could mean, a nice little warm cap to keep your head warm, or gloves, which I'm always out with, down to a warm puffy. And there's all that stuff that goes into keeping us safe. And like I said, I do include in here cordage, and I wrestle with this about where to put it, because in my head, cordage is sort of a multi-use thing. It could have gone in with our repair side of the world, but I did put this in here specifically on the sheltering side, because more often than not, this is where we're going to be using it. Next up is a biggie in my book, and the Mountaineers just classified it as hydration. And they didn't really elaborate on a whole lot of it. Obviously, technology has changed a lot in the last 100 years, where we have the option to filter versus purify, versus do chemical treatments, all of which are perfectly fine, even to the stance of doing UV treatments. But we just really need a way to make our water safe to drink. Even on the scouting side of the world, they just chalk it up to a water bottle, which is simple enough as long as we've got some kind of container, but they don't really address how to make it safe. I think they're assuming that everything's going to be good. On the 5 C's of survival front, a container is definitely one of our 5 C's, but also coupled in, also one of the other C's is a cotton bandana. In my head, I'm using this for pre-filtering, but even better so, if you could come in with a shema instead, I think that gets you ahead of the game even further. So definitely one not to be overlooked, the hydration world. Okay, so next up on our list for the Mountaineers is one that I put a pretty low priority on, especially if I'm going to be gone, or at least expecting to be gone fewer than a couple of days, and that's the nutrition factor. Quite honestly, I could stand to lose a few pounds. Definitely perfectly fine going and fasting for a couple of days and not having to add additional calories. If I'm going to be gone for multiple days, absolutely I want to keep that on there. The Scouts list it down as trail food. It doesn't show up on the 10 C's of survival, just because quite honestly we can go a while without some of that stuff. Okay, so rounding out our list of essentials for outdoor activities or essentials for scouting, both of those have a single line item that just says first aid. So this is a first aid kit. Definitely something you want to take with you while you're out and about. Doesn't show up specifically on the 10 C's of survival. But, definitely an important one to have with you while you're out and about. I always try to never overlook this piece. And this is one of the areas that quite honestly day hikers overlook probably more often than not. So last category, first aid. Okay, you should be picking up on some consistencies here, and that these systems are actually really closely related. There are some minor differences in all of them, but there's one major overarching thing that really is the consistent theme through all of them, and it is directed toward really, if I'm taking some stuff out there to take care of my basic needs, I'm going to be far better off if something goes wrong to take care of myself and those with me than I would be if I didn't have anything else. These systems are all directed toward preventing some of that, whether it's guidelines to be outside, or guidelines for hiking, or guidelines for scouting, or just overall survivability. All these things are giving a good message, and that we need to be prepared to take care of ourselves while we're outside. It's leading us on that direct path, and that there are far too many folks out on the trail right now that just aren't adequately prepared to be out there. And these are all focused on getting us prepared. So if we're moving down the road of being better equipped while we're out there, we're all going to be better off for it. If you guys want to see what the minimum is that I carry with me when I'm out on a day hike, take a look at the video linked in the description below. Okay, guys, hope you found that beneficial and taking away a couple nuggets that you can put to play next time you're out on the trail. And as always, if you're out on the trail right now watching this, just remember, left foot, right foot, repeat. We'll see you out there next time.